A sleeping bag has to be big enough to get inside and zip up. So this one is definitely big enough for me. Now, a sleeping bag doesn't have any heat of its own, but our bodies make heat. So a sleeping bag keeps us warm by trapping the heat we make from our bodies inside the bag. And a sleeping bag can be made of lots of different materials, like down feathers from geese or ducks, or man-made material like polyester. But how does a sleeping bag trap the heat we make from our bodies inside the bag? Well, to find out, we're going to have to take a closer look. A sleeping bag is made up of different layers of material, like a sandwich. On the outside is a smooth protective layer called nylon. On the inside is an insulation layer made from a material called polyester. The polyester insulation layer is made up of compartments called baffles. The baffles hold the polyester in place to make sure that the bag stays warm all over. Polyester is made up of millions of tiny fibres that all crisscross together, and the air is trapped in between these fibres. When our warm bodies get inside the sleeping bag, our body heat warms the air inside too. The polyester insulation layer traps the warm air inside the bag and stops it escaping. It also keeps the cold from outside and the cold from the ground from coming in, keeping our body nice and warm all night long. Isn't it clever how the different layers work together to keep us warm? Shall we see what they look like? This here is the outer layer. It's thin, but tough, and it's water resistant, so it will stop water and damp from getting inside. And then this here is the insulation layer. That's the part with all of the fibres that will trap our body heat to keep us warm. To see the sleeping bags in action, I'm going to use my special camera. It's called a thermal camera, and it shows us how hot or cold things are. I've got 2 sleeping bags that are exactly the same, and I'm going to get inside one of them and warm up and leave the other one empty. What do you think's going to happen? Let's switch the thermal camera on to find out. Getting into a sleeping bag is easy. You just need to undo a zip. Oh, I like that sound. Can you hear that? It's a really long zip. Now we just need to get in. And zip myself in. This hood at the top will trap in heat to keep my head warm. And if it's really cold, I can pull this little toggle here. So just my face pokes out the top. Right, there we go. Just need to stay in here for a few minutes to warm it up. Wriggling about is a good way to get warm quickly. It's really warm. Right, time's up. Let's see how warm the inside of this sleeping bag is. Wow, look at that! The sleeping bag that I was in is glowing bright red, and that's because it is really warm. That insulation layer has trapped all of my body heat. And the empty sleeping bag is yellow. That's because it is much cooler. How brilliant is that? What did you like most about seeing how sleeping bags work? Do you remember what you call the layer of material that stores all the heat? That's right, it's the insulation layer. Did you hear the sound the zip made when I got inside? And did you see how my body heat changed the colour of my sleeping bag on the thermal camera? It changed to bright red. This is an umbrella workshop, and they've been making umbrellas here for over 100 years. You can get lots of different types of umbrellas. There are patterned umbrellas, frilly umbrellas, see-through umbrellas, and even yellow umbrellas, like this one. umbrellas keep you dry? Let's use this watering can to see what happens when the water hits the umbrella. You ready? Okay. Wow! Did you see the water droplets running off the umbrella? It all happened really quickly, didn't it? So I've got my special slow motion camera with me so we can see it happening in more detail. Slow motion means that we can film something that's happening really fast, but when we watch it back, it appears much slower. Ready to record. Let's see what happens. Let's pour the water on. Oh, look at that! The material has a waterproof coating, so instead of the water soaking through, it runs off. It's a bit like the water droplets are dancing. It's really clever, isn't it? But how do all the parts of the umbrella come together? Let's find out. This bit here is the part that you hold, and it's called the handle. And then this long wooden stick is called the shaft. And then can you see these long spindly bits? Those are called the ribs. I think they look a little bit like spiders' legs. When you open the umbrella, the ribs stretch out, and that's what gives the umbrella its shape. This is Lee, and it's Lee's job to put all the parts of the umbrella together. First, Lee cuts some holes into the shaft using a cutting machine. Then cuts and twists 2 pieces of metal wire into the same shape. They look a bit like little hooks, don't they? But they're not hooks. They're the springs, and they help the umbrella to open and close. The springs are then fitted into the holes that Lee made. This part is called the runner, and it will move up the umbrella to open it and down the umbrella to close it. But listen to this. Can you hear that clicking sound? That means the runner has fixed onto the spring. But I think it sounds a little bit like a light being switched on and off. Next, Lee fixes the ribs onto the runner using some bendy wire. Look, the ribs are all loose. That's no good, is it? That's because Lee's not quite finished. Now he's attaching the ribs to another ring, and that's called the notch. Now the ribs are attached to the runner and the notch. So let's see what happens when we open it this time. There we go. That's better, isn't it? But this umbrella isn't going to keep us dry, so what do you think it needs? It needs a canopy. The canopy sits on top of the umbrella, but what colour should we choose? How about blue? Yellow? I think we should make a bright red umbrella. The red material is cut into shapes using a sharp knife. Do you know what shape this is? It has 1, 2, 3 sides. That's right, it's a triangle. Our canopy needs 8 of these, fixed together on a sewing machine. The 8 triangle pieces have been sewn together to make the canopy. But it's not finished yet. It needs some tiny tips. Now Jan's sewing the canopy to the frame. Oh, we are so nearly there. Look, the tips are being attached to the ribs. Last of all, Lee fits a shiny cap onto the umbrella shaft. Brilliant. A finished umbrella, ready for me to use on a rainy day. I loved seeing how umbrellas were made. What was your favourite bit? Do you remember the part that looked a bit like wobbly spider's legs? That's right, it was the ribs. Did you hear the sound the spring made when the runner locked into place? It was a clicking sound. And did you see the water bouncing off the canopy when we used my special slow-motion camera? Trainers are made in a place like this, a trainer factory. Trainers can be made from lots of different materials, like this shiny cloth called nylon, and this rougher material that's made out of cotton called canvas. And trainers come in lots of different colours. What colour trainers shall we make today? I like orange and red. First, the material is taken to the cutter press, where it can be cut to the right shapes. So Jen uses these cutters. They work just like cookie cutters. They're laid down in the correct spot and then pushed down by the head press to cut the shapes we need. Look how many shapes there are. But it doesn't look much like a pair of trainers, does it? I think this looks more like a beard. And this looks like a moustache. But that's because they all need to be sewn together. Linda uses a sewing machine to sew together the parts of the shoe that make the shoe upper. That's the bit that goes over the top of your foot. Linda's using this blue machine called an eyeliter. It makes holes in the shoe uppers for the laces. Works just like a hole punch, only it's much quicker. Oh, it's noisy, isn't it? Look, here are the holes for the laces. So next, the laces are threaded through the holes so they'll fit nice and tight. I'm going to have a practice at tying these laces. You want to practice with me. First of all, you make a knot, and then you use one lace to make a loop, take the other and loop it round, tuck it through the hole and pull. Like that. Now it's time to give the trainers their correct shape. First, they're put into a machine called the back part moulder. Can you guess what part of the trainer it shapes? That's right, it's the back part of the trainer where your heel goes. Next, they're put onto wooden moulds called lasts. They look just like real feet and will give the trainers the correct shape. Stefan fits the trainers onto the lasts, then puts them through 3 machines. One to shape the toe end, the next to shape the sides. And finally through the seat and side laster, which stretches and attaches the material onto the inner sole underneath. That was amazing! But it was quite tricky to see from here, so I'm going to use my special camera on a long pole so we can see what it looks like from above. What an incredible machine. It looks like a robot insect with its pincers and claws folding the shoe together. All the rough bits of the shoe are then sanded off to make it nice and smooth. The underneath of the trainer is coated in a strong glue, which is then put through a heater to make it even stickier. The trainers are nearly ready, but to make sure they're comfortable to walk and run in, we have to stick the soles on. then pressed into place in this machine. And there we have a finished pair of bright, colourful trainers. All that's left to do is try them on. They fit perfectly. There are lots of different types of swings, but they all have the same basic parts. A strong frame called an A-frame, because it looks like a capital A. Can you see? And stretching across the top of the frame is a long pole, and on the pole there are some brackets. The brackets are those metal loops that attach these two chains to the frame. Do you know what's on the end of the chains? That's right, it's a seat to sit on. And if you get someone to give you a push, then you start to swing. This is my friend Jess. She's going to give me a push. But what happens when the person pushing you stops? Thanks, Jess. You start to slow down. So if you want to keep on swinging, you have to use your legs like this. You push them forward and draw them up and underneath you. And you start to swing again. It's great, isn't it? But how does a swing keep on moving so we keep on swinging? I think we need to take a closer look. When we first sit on the swing, our body is in a sitting position, just like when we sit on a chair, and the swing is flat. When we push off and start to swing, we have to change the shape of our body to keep the swing moving. When we get to the front part of our swinging, we lean forward and push our legs backwards. Moving our body like this means we're turning the position of the swing in the opposite direction, and that helps push us back the other way. Then, when the swing reaches the back, we lean our body back and we push our legs out. This turns the swing in the other direction. Moving our body like this at the front, then the back, then the front, then the back, puts energy into our swinging motions and means we can keep on swinging and swinging. That was brilliant, wasn't it? What should we play on next? Let's try the slide. I love sliding down slides. Do you? Whee! There are lots of different types of slide, but they all have two main parts. Some steps with handles to help you get to the top safely. And then there's the main part that you slide down, which is always an angle like this. Do you know what helps us slide down a slide? Let's find out using this ball. When you let go of something, it falls to the ground. And that's because of a force called gravity. And gravity pulls everything on Earth downwards, even us. So if we jump in the air, we come back down to the ground too. Because the top of the slide is higher than the bottom of the slide, gravity helps us to slide down to the bottom, just like this ball. How quickly we go down the slide depends on something called friction. And friction is created when two surfaces rub together. Different types of material create different amounts of friction. It's why some things slide easily and others grip. This towel is made of cotton, and cotton slips over things easily. Watch this. Whee! That was really fast. That's because the cotton towel and the metal slide are both slippy materials, so there isn't much friction. But some materials create more friction. These are harder to move against, like a rubber mat, or these rubber wellies. I'm going to attach my special camera to my wellies so we can see what happens when I go down the slide. There we go. Okay, are you ready? Let's go. I'm not going very fast, have I? Can you hear the sound of the rubber against the metal? Well, that wasn't such a smooth slide, was it? Did you see that my rubber wellies were creating a lot of friction so that I didn't slide down so smoothly? To make bubbles, you need two main ingredients. The first one is water, and the second one is soap, like washing up liquid that you use to clean the dishes with. I'm going to add a bit of soap to the water. Let's give this bubble mixture a try. Here we go. Ready? Can you see the way the bubbles come out of the wand? I think we should take a look at that with my special slow motion camera. Slow motion means that we can see things that happen really quickly, much slower. So let's use it and see what it looks like when I blow air through the bubble mixture in the wand. Here goes. Wow! Look how the bubble mixture stretches and then breaks off into a wobbly, round bubble. Do you know what that round shape's called? That's right, it's called a sphere. Look at that lovely sphere-shaped bubble. But do you know how soap and water make bubbles and why bubbles are a round shape? To find out, I think we need to take an even closer look. When we blow a bubble using bubble mixture, it makes a round shape made of bubble film. The bubble film has 3 layers. A thin layer of water sandwiched between 2 layers of soap. Inside the soap layers are millions of soap molecules. Each soap molecule has 2 parts, a head that likes water and a tail that doesn't like water. The heads of the soap molecules push towards the water, while the tails pull away from the water. The pulling and pushing makes the mixture stretchy enough to blow bubbles with. So when we blow air through the bubble wand, the mixture stretches out. At first it's wobbly, but because the soap molecules are pushing and pulling in every direction, the bubble quickly makes the tightest shape it can around the air inside, making a sphere-shaped bubble. Bubbles are so interesting, aren't they? They're made because of the way water and soap work when they're put together. But to help us understand this, we need to know that water has something called surface tension. Can you see the top of the water just here? It almost looks like it's got a kind of skin on the top, doesn't it? And that's because every droplet of water is made up of millions of tiny water molecules. And those water molecules like to cling together really tightly. And it's because of the way they cling together that makes that skin. And that's what we call surface tension. I can show you surface tension if I use a paper clip just here. Paper clips are made of metal, so they're heavy. So you might think that a paper clip would sink if we put it in water. But can you see? The paper clip is floating. And that's because of all those water molecules that are clinging together really tightly, making surface tension, which is stopping the paper clip from sinking to the bottom. Now watch what happens when I put a little bit of soap onto the top of the water. Did you see the paper clip sink to the bottom? That's because of the way soap and water act when they're mixed together. All of those soap molecules work really hard to pull the water molecules apart, and that makes the mixture more stretchy. Stretchy enough for the paper clip to sink to the bottom. But how does surface tension affect bubbles in the air? Can you see that the bubbles pop as soon as I try to touch them? That's because when we touch a bubble with our dry hand, we break the bubble's surface tension.
Our hands have a little bit of oil in them and that keeps them nice and soft. But soap loves oil. That's why we use it to clean dirty, oily dishes. So when a soap bubble lands on our oily hands, those soap molecules try to take the oil away, but this bursts the bubble. So what can I use to try and help me catch a bubble without it bursting? I'm going to use a glove. Now let's see what happens. Whoa! The glove is stopping the soapy bubble mixing with the oil on my hands, which means I can catch the bubble and even bounce it. Wow! Look at all of these kites in different shapes and sizes. Like this one here. It looks like a beautiful bird, doesn't it? This kite is a type of diamond shape that we call a rhomboid. But I think my favourite is this one just here. For a kite to fly in the air, it has to be very light. And this kite is made of a material called nylon. And nylon is really strong, but very thin. Now, can you see this piece here that goes from the top all the way to the bottom of the kite? That's called the kite's spine. And if I turn it over, we can see this piece that goes across the kite. And that's called the cross spar. But attached to the spine, we have this piece of string that we call the kite line, and it's what we hold on to when we fly the kite in the air. When we fly kites, we have to make sure that the area is big and it's free from any trees, roads or power lines. This one is just right. You ready, guys? 3, 2, 1, up! Wow!
Can you hear the sound of the kites flapping in the wind?
To fly a kite safely, we need to make sure the wind's not too strong or too light. So to find out how strong the wind is today, I'm going to use this very special machine, and it's called an anemometer. The anemometer spins round, and it's telling me the wind speed today is around 10 miles per hour, and I think that will do just right. The best way to launch a kite is with 2 people, and Bill is a kite flying expert. He's going to help me launch the kite by holding on to it whilst I roll out the kite line. You ready, Bill?
Yep.
Okay. Now I need to stand with my back to the wind, pull on the kite line. Bill is lifting the kite up. Here goes. There it goes! We're flying a kite!
To get the kite higher, I can let out the kite line a little bit at a time.
Wow, it looks absolutely beautiful up there. But how does a kite fly in the sky? To find out, I'm going to film Bill flying this kite with my special camera. This is my special slow motion camera, and it helps me to see things slowed right down. Can you see the kite catching the wind and lifting up into the air?
The curved shape of the kite and the way it tilts as it flies means that air moves over the top of it faster than the air moving underneath. This creates lift, pushing the kite up into the sky. The stronger the wind, the more lift there will be. We can also feel the wind trying to blow the kite away. This creates something called drag.
To stop the kite just blowing away, we pull on the kite line, and this creates something called thrust. But for the kite to fly perfectly, we need the thrust, that's the pulling on the kite line, and the drag, that's the force of the wind, to be the same.
Let's see if I can fly the kite to show you those forces working in the air.
Now the kite is in the air, the thrust of me pulling on the kite line and the drag of the wind pushing the kite away balance each other out. And that's what keeps the kite flying perfectly in the air. And now I can just stand back and enjoy it. I loved seeing how a kite works. What was your favourite bit?
Do you remember what you call the string that's attached to the kite? That's right, it's called the kite line. Did you hear the sound of the kites flapping in the wind? And did you see the way the wind caught our kite and it lifted into the air?